let me do this. My paralegal is saying she's having problem with the stream and Facebook on Wait 1 Minute, Wait 1 Legal Minutes page. And I'm not sure why it's showing up as private. So what we are going to do is we're going to keep going, and then we'll just repost this later. And we'll just repost that later on there. Okay, so what we are talking today about is we're just revisiting the topics that we spoke about on Tuesday. And those topics were Governor Kemp lifting the shelter order, the SBA loan distributions, and partial unemployment claims. And these are really interesting topics to me and hopefully to you because, and of course, we are all affected by the shelter order, but as a small business owner, I'm personally vested in the SBA loan distributions as well as the partial unemployment claims. And as I have submitted these applications and have been waiting for funding, I thought that it was important to share the information as I was receiving it and going through the process myself. Some of the updates from Tuesday's conversations before I get to the new information and new discussions, Governor Kemp has not retracted his statements to lift the shelter in order. He is at the center of national debate. We are continuing this conversation today, so please comment and share your thoughts on reopening tomorrow. We also talked about the SBA loans, and as of Tuesday's conversation, I didn't know any small business owner, and I know quite a few, but I didn't personally know any who actually received the funding. A few people received approvals, a few people received communications, the confirmation numbers, all those things, which I did as well. But as of today, I know 2 small businesses who actually received the funding. So congratulations, really happy for those 2 businesses that I know of that received funding. And we'll talk more about those updates and how those funds were distributed. We also talked about partial unemployment claims, and we just discussed the process of the claims, who can file the partial unemployment claims and how to file the partial unemployment claims. So I've received a ton of text messages from, especially my friends, my colleagues from Maryland saying, what are we doing down here? I don't know. I do know that we had a governor who was on one end of the spectrum and a mayor who was at another end of the spectrum. And I cannot understand the logic behind prematurely opening with the numbers, the data that we actually discussed last week. On Tuesday, the data shows that it is not safe to open and will not be safe to open until after June 15th. We discussed this on Tuesday. I was hoping, because I am just a hopeful person, although realistic, but I was hoping that Governor Kemp would reconsider his decision and rescind the lifting of the order for tomorrow. At any rate, it does not appear as it is going to happen. So we need to prepare. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, we appreciate you. We appreciate your resilience. Unfortunately, all people don't share your commitment to keeping our community safe. They don't. She received a text message last Wednesday. She actually posted. Well, just wait 1 legal minute. It is unfortunate that that is not someone's response, but how they responded to their disagreement in your position to keep Atlanta closed for the safety of the community. I admire your response to this person. In theory and sometimes in practice, I believe in coming over the top when people go low. I think that name calling is juvenile and demonstrates an inability to express oneself or one's idea. So I don't think that that person could sit down with you and have an intellectual conversation and exchange of information. So we're going to leave that text message just kind of in the wind. It was definitely, I think, important to shed some light on that mindset or mentality that exists, still exists, will always exist, and we have to govern ourselves accordingly. So we appreciate leaders like you who can address people like that in a way that we can be proud of and that we can learn from, because it's not going to end. Let's talk about the businesses that are opening again, because we talked about this on Tuesday. Fitness centers, barbershops, hair salons, nail salons, massage therapists. I saw a few memes, a few posts about the types of businesses that will be opening. I wait one legal minute. I have my opinion about the targeted businesses, that they are targeted, that the owners are targeted, that the people who are going to go to these places are targeted. Those are my opinions. I think that we need to stay at home. Stay the fuck at home. Stay the fuck home. You see that scroll on the bottom? Stay home. Stay home. Stay home. We've seen the data. It's being shared. It's not, the information is there. I understand that the economy is being affected by businesses closing, but I would rather be alive and poor and having the strength, ability to rebuild than lose a sector of lives because we are being socially irresponsible. We need accountability. We need to be accountable for one another. So if our governor is throwing us into the streets by his lifting the shelter order, that doesn't mean we have to do it. So businesses, nail salons, barbershops, I encourage you to commit to your patrons and stay closed. Commit to their safety and health and well-being and stay closed. And try to look at this for the long term, the end game. There is an end game. Remember, everybody has their end game. So let's just be responsible. Let's keep these businesses closed. Let's stay home. It's important. Now, we talked about the SBA loan distributions. Hello, Sharon. Thanks for joining. We talked about on Tuesday the SBA loan distribution, and my best friend from undergrad, well, she's my best friend, and Dr. Rochelle Bradford, thank you so much for sending me this article. Much of the conversation on Tuesday talked about how bigger businesses, it was referred to in one article as enterprises, actually received the funding, millions of dollars. And the small businesses that the money was intended to support never saw the money. Publicly traded companies, Shake Shack, who since has returned some of the money, Harvard, all of these companies overseas companies, big businesses actually received the funding. Meantime, and meanwhile, we smaller businesses, myself included, did not see the money. So the article that Dr. Bradford sent to me discussed, and it's an NPR article. It was published. Well, it was an NPR interview on yesterday, April 22nd, and I have the link to this article, and I will include, and I keep saying article, it is not an article. It is a NPR live, NPR. I'm going to try to include the link for you. Giving me a little, all my technical difficulties. So I will post that later, but the NPR interview talked about banks handling the government's $349 billion loan program for small businesses, made more than $10 billion in fees. And even as tens of thousands of small businesses were shut out of the program, according to an analysis of the financial records by NPR, these numbers demonstrated that the banks made a lot of money. For every transaction made, banks took 1 to 5% in fees, depending on the amount of the loan, according to the government figures. Loans worth less than $350,000 brought in 5%, while loans in excess of $2 million to $10 million brought in 1% fees. So essentially, the more money the banks lent to people, the more money in processing they receive. So the processing fees, they receive more money with bigger loans. So why would they lend some money to me when they are going to get 5% of some small amount, when they can lend money to lend $5 million and make 1% off a $5 million loan? They're getting more money. So for example, on April 7th, RCSH Operations, the parent company of Ruth's Chris. Okay, so RCSH Operations is the parent company of Ruth's Chris. They received a loan of $10 million. $10 million. JP Morgan Chase and Company, acting as a lender, took a $100,000 fee. Wait one minute. Okay, so this is why some of us small businesses who bank with these larger bankers didn't receive any money. Why would we? It wasn't a good business decision, right? It wasn't a good business decision. They made more money off the bigger companies. Now, the two people that I know, earlier I stated that since Tuesday, I learned of two small businesses, minority businesses, who actually received some funding. I don't know how much. I wouldn't ask that question. Very happy that they received the money. But here's what's important about their situations. Both of them bank with very small banks, okay? Very small, smaller banks. I bank with Bank of America. Many other people that I know bank with Bank of America, SunTrust, Chase, okay? Just calling them out there. None of these colleagues that I know, small business owners that I know who deal with the bigger banks, have received the funding. After reviewing this article and giving it some thought and having some conversations with other colleagues, this is why. So in total, those transactions fees amounted to more than $10 billion for banks, according to the transaction data provided by the SBA and the Treasury Department. I think that's just, the money was meant for us. The money was meant for small businesses, and the loopholes allowed the lenders to take control on how to handpick who the loans will go to, which was done to benefit the banks. I'm glad this is helpful, Kamei. I appreciate you commenting. I'm just putting the information out there and having some dialogue. Let me know if you applied. Let me know if you ever received your money. I have some more information on that NPR interview, and I'm going to get that link on my comments. but I don't want to spend too much more time on that. I do want to go to the next article. My dear friend, former office mate, sister-in-law, and accountability, Gidget Johnson, sent me an article from Essence, and the title of the article was "Advocates Say Black Businesses Get Sidelined in 484 Billion Relief Package." This is an article written by Tanya A. Christian. This was also written yesterday. In general, the article gives a background of the historical unfair lending practices and lack of access of funding for minority businesses, which is helpful for some people who don't understand why this is nothing new for minority businesses. The article is helpful in understanding or breaking down the issues with the bill and some changes that hopefully the next round of funding or the bill for the next round of funding will address. But it goes through a few critiques. Obviously, the critique I just talked about, the banks lending to the larger businesses. But another critique of the bill is that it does not ensure equity and transparency. It's a concern expressed by Senator Kamala Harris, who tweeted last week, "I joined my colleagues this week calling for data transparency on small business loans to make sure that people of color aren't being shut out from help during a pandemic." Listen, two people who've received funding over the course of these distributions is not fair, is not equitable. Again, really happy that I know of two. I am pleased that some money was given to businesses that I personally know. And if you know other people that receive the funds, perhaps these numbers are off. Perhaps this opinion that I have is off. But in this article, in essence, it says that we hope that the SBA will step up where Congress has failed and take steps to ensure equitable access to this program so that all communities are able to weather this storm. The SBA can specifically allocate resources for CDFIs and MDIs, and it can require robust data collection from all participating lenders. Wealthy companies already got more than fair share of the PPP. Now it's time for small businesses owned by Blacks, Latinos, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders and Native Americans to have the access they were denied. So I do hope that this bill, this new bill that will go before Congress and hopefully be passed by Trump, will give us more access to the funding or equal access, or that it will ensure, and that article talked about ensuring that certain monies are earmarked for minority businesses. Of course, the first bill did not do that. So hopefully this bill will earmark a certain amount of the funds to minority businesses. So that we can get some support here and not just a small sector of small businesses, but a more equitable sector. The last issue I want to talk about is the unemployment claims. I talked about how to file unemployment claims on Tuesday. Just a reminder, partial unemployment claims can be filed by employers for full-time employees who work less than full-time during a pay period due to lack of work. Some say that this is the reason why we're going, Atlanta is opening. They don't want to pay any more unemployment claims. And so by law, if the state is shut down, if you continue to have people work against the order, then your business is in violation of the order. If you, now that the order is lifted, if you have people who are unemployed and who have been receiving unemployment, then you can the state will no longer offer those benefits. So the unemployment fund is being drained, right? So if the order says now you can go back to work, the state no longer has an obligation to pay those unemployment claims for those reasons, right? So again, it's business, but people's lives are going to be affected. So you have to make a decision about your business. And it is a tough decision to make. The partial unemployment option, which I offered as kind of like a plan B if you didn't get any funding, my employees have finally it's been processed. Small business, we need as much help as possible. So take advantage of what is available. File the employers must file the partial unemployment claims, have your employees' information, have your employer portal information. You have to file the partial unemployment claims through the employer portal online. So you need your username, your password, and you need your PIN number if you need to reset that information. If you need to change your administrator, you have to call Unemployment Department of Labor. You have to call and you have to get the document to change the administrator. I have one. If you want to reach out to me, I can give you that change of administrator form, but it takes a long time to be processed. So I reached out to my former payroll process provider who submitted the form on my behalf. So I submitted my form about a week ago. It takes a little time for the change of administrator forms to process. That was all the information that I wanted to review. We did this in 26 minutes. I want to thank you all for continuing to support Wait One Legal Minute. I did have a comment from Tuesday from Marsha Fenwick, who happens to be my mama. And her comment was, if the coronavirus can be traced to an employer, will there be a claim, or will the employee have a claim against the employer for allowing them, for requiring them to be at work and them contracting the disease? So as I said earlier, if the shelter-in-place order is in effect and your employer opens and you're required to be at work and you get sick, then there will probably be a remedy for the employee against the employer because the employer was open in violation of the shelter order. On the other hand, since the shelter order will be lifted tomorrow for certain businesses in Georgia, if an employee contracts the virus at those designated businesses, then the employee will probably not have a claim against the employer because the employer was operating consistent with the lifted order. So I am not an employment lawyer. So I would suggest that if you have any questions about, and also there probably an issue of determining how the disease was contracted. So, or the origin of how the disease was contracted. But I would speak with an employment lawyer if you contracted the disease and believe you contracted it at your employment. But Ms. Fenwick, thank you so much for the question. So let me know your questions. I'll try to answer them. You can put them in the comment section of this live feed even after it ends. I will answer it. If not by text, I will go over the comment or the question in the next show. So I'd like to see you and your friends share, like, comment, send me articles. Dr. Bradford and Gidget Johnson, I appreciate y'all sending me the articles. I read them, I review them. It is so helpful. So I will see y'all next Tuesday and next Thursday. Please be safe and stay the fuck home.